cocaine and heroin into Europe and the United States. It is then passed on to the mafia for sale at street level, sometimes by police officers in uniform. It's an arrangement which nets the generals and the mafia chiefs billions, and the fact that someone of Ted Gunderson's credibility was completely ignored when he went public with this information underlines the fact that our entire mainstream media, as well as the entire justice system, has been bought off. So the question must now be asked, if this shadow government of the world's only superstate can get away with the murder of a president and through their wealth be in total control of the United States military, media, and the justice system, what else might they be getting away with? Could it possibly be that the serious researchers have been right all along? And remembering what happened to Flight 553, that 9/11 truly was one huge confidence trick? Once the dust had settled on 9/11, people immediately began to realise there was something very wrong with the 9/11 TV coverage. First along came Dylan Avery with his amazing film Loose Change. He proved conclusively that the official report was nonsense because aircraft fuel does not burn at even half the temperature required to melt steel, and that the towers defied the laws of physics by collapsing with perfect uniformity at free fall speed. Buildings in Germany which were bombed over and over again didn't collapse with perfect uniformity down to ground level. Avery also pointed out that in Kennedy's time, his chiefs of staff drafted plans to kill innocent people and commit acts of terrorism in the United States in order to whip up support for a war with Cuba, codenamed Operation Northwoods. These plans included hijacking planes and blowing up ships and landmark buildings in order to stimulate a helpful wave of national indignation which could be used to oust Fidel Castro. And there wasn't anything exceptional in this initiative. Northwoods was an offshoot of the notorious Operation Gladio, a sustained campaign organised by MI6 and the CIA, which perpetrated many bombing atrocities in post-war Europe, which they blamed on what they said were communist terror organisations. A typical example was the horrific bombing of Bologna railway station in 1980. Italians will be appalled to learn this outrage was committed by the Americans and the British. But this particular atrocity, which like all others during this period was intended to keep people living in fear of a bogus enemy, so they would accept increasing state control by so-called strong leaders, illustrates only too well the fact that some 40 years prior to 9/11, the cabal of secret Nazis who killed Kennedy were making serious preparations for terrorist attacks upon their European allies and even upon their own country. In the 9/11 news footage, it is abundantly clear that the interviewees are actually paid actors, speaking lines which have been written for them.
I feel like I was in a movie.
This is exactly the same situation as in The Men Who Killed Kennedy. And because these are people who are being expected to perform, they tend to overdo it.
I could be the only one that saw the man. He killed the president. And to be honest with you, if I'd have known this, I wouldn't have given the interview.
It is perfectly clear that the 9/11 street people are trying much too hard to convince their audience
Approximately several minutes after the first plane had hit, I saw this plane come out of nowhere and just careen right into the side of the Twin Tower, exploding through the other side. And then I witnessed both towers collapse, one first and then the second, mostly due to structural failure because the fire was just too intense.
9/11 was in reality just another CIA special effects movie production. And it really has become the Kennedy assassination's long-lost twin, because witnesses who know the truth of what really happened are all being murdered. This didn't stop some people from immediately pointing out that the London Tube bombings were a hoax. The alleged terrorists couldn't have ridden into London on a train which was cancelled. And seasoned researchers are now becoming quite surprised at how sloppy and obvious these alleged terrorist acts are becoming. Any detective would instantly realise the Woolwich terror incident was a joke. We were shown pictures of a supposedly decapitated man lying prone on the street. If that were true, he should be lying in a puddle of his own blood, and the alleged attacker would be soaked in blood all over his front from arterial spray. All terrorism is fake. It is military deception practiced by the rich upon the poor in an ongoing class war. And the most important weapon at their disposal in this class war are television presenters. The BBC has actually become the Ministry of Truth from Orwell's 1984. Everyone working for the BBC today is a whore of the ruling class and a traitor to our way of life, because it is very hard to believe they are all unwitting accomplices in this class war. When we remember that it was some of the BBC's own journalists who revealed that the 9/11 hijackers were all alive, it's hard to accept that their news presenter colleagues haven't figured out the totalitarian nature of what people like Jane Stanley, who reported the collapse of World Trade Center 7 20 minutes before it came down, are really up to. And yet still they go on giving us reassuring smiles while telling lies on behalf of the ruling class. Of course, then people ask, oh, yes, but why would they do it? Why is all of this Muslim, multicultural, political correctness thing happening to us right now? It's happening because we no longer have an enemy. Tourists today can visit what used to be the Eastern Bloc, and they can photograph the derelict, rusting heap of scrap metal, which used to be the Soviet war machine. It has gone, and this has created an unprecedented political situation which the world has never seen before, in which there is only one superstate, the Anglo-American alliance. No other power on earth today is capable of fighting a war on the grand scale. China, North Korea, Russia simply do not have the economic resources. So in order to make us believe we still have an enemy, and therefore have to live in fear, the rich had to provide us with a new enemy. And this is why in recent years they've encouraged unstable Islamic people to emigrate to the West. It's to provide us with a ready-made enemy. This is their master plan for this single superstate age. And it's for this reason that they perverted political correctness, to make people believe that anybody who refuses to go along with this new doctrine of multiculturalism is the worst person of all. In the West today, we've become quite used to seeing confrontations between the alleged lunatic fringe of Islam and indigenous white men who are trying to defend their culture from foreign influences. What groups like the EDL do not understand, however, is who is really pulling the strings here? Who is behind this? Who arranged this fight? Because any Roman senator would tell you this is simply the old maxim of divide and rule. The Romans invented this system. They always made sure that every conquered region pushed together tribes who were traditionally hostile to one another. The British copied this method after World War I by redrawing the entire map of the Middle East to make sure that the new boundaries always set one Arab tribe against another, particularly the Kurds. What we see on the streets of Britain and America today is the same thing. The whole idea is that while you're fighting against Muslims and they're fighting against you, no one has the time to stop and think about who actually created this situation and who their real enemy really is. The rulers of the Middle Ages arranged a never-ending religious war between Catholic and Protestant for precisely the same reason. Now, why must we always think we have an enemy? Because the ruling group always maintain their position in society by controlling the population through fear. Think about it. If we don't have an enemy, would the public be prepared to pay for the army? Would we be happy to pay for MI5 so that they can read our emails and put a surveillance camera on every street corner? Big Brother has to have an excuse for watching us all the time. And what they call national security is always the perfect excuse. The moment you make a world at peace, it's gone. The keystone in the arch of ruling class power is gone if we don't have an enemy. So the rich are always going to provide us with an enemy forever. And the lesson we need to learn from all of this is that everything in our lives is and always has been a rich man's trick.